When I think about good anime, it's hard to ignore some of the cultural touchstones that have cemented themselves into our mainstream. You see major athletes, celebrities, and other influencers rocking their love of anime, with many openly embracing their inner weave, like Israel Adesanya whipping out hand signs before a fight, or Samuel L. Jackson starring in Afro Samurai Resurrection. Through these big names showing their love of anime, the entire genre of Japanese comics and cartoons have broken out of the nerdy kid at lunch saying baka to, still a lot of that, but at least now the other kids in class know what they're talking about. I think it's this widespread acceptance of anime that makes me so comfortable. When a studio decides to make a live action adaptation of our favorite series because of their intense love for the genre. Wait, wait. Um, that's that's not right. Why do they make these series again?
Hello, I like money.
These media juggernauts see the piles of money that anime has been making over the years, and it's hard to imagine them not wanting a slice of the pie. These have turned out in various qualities over the years. While some get decent to even good reviews, there are a handful that have other outcomes. Today, I'd like to look at one of these adaptations, Netflix's Cowboy Bebop, go over some of its successes and failures, and roll that into a few bite sized lessons for the executives at Netflix, who are obviously watching this, for what to do, what not to do, and how those can be used for the One Piece live action adaptation. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of watching just the chef's kiss of anime, Cowboy Bebop has a mountain of things that it did well that caused it to become one of the most famous of all time. If I had to boil down the single most important aspect of why Bebop is so enjoyable to watch, I'd say it's the rhythm of the scenes. And when I say rhythm, I'm not just talking about the soundtrack. While that is important to every scene, instead, I'm talking about how there is a flow and a beat to everything that we see, and that same rhythm flows from one scene into the next seamlessly. From shots overlooking cities, fight scenes in a darkened church, or simply the flipping of switches and preparing for takeoff, Bebop is effortless to watch. As you spend time with the crew, you find that every scene has an easy to flow rhythm, and when those rhythms change and a scene shifts from a calm afternoon preparing supper to a high speed dogfight, you can easily follow along with the action and adjust to the new scene's rhythm. Because we as the viewers are already bought in and following the pacing on screen, when the location or action gets flipped on its head, you're already feeling the change in tempo. Because this rhythm is so enjoyable, and because the vibes being put out by the characters match that rhythm so well, you want to watch as many scenes as you can with them, because you know that everything in the show will present this easy to watch feeling of the scene on a silver platter. There's not a dull moment. You are being entertained even if there's no action. This results in us wanting to see more of the characters and how they interact with each other and the world around them. When following Spike, he brings a carefree and loose attitude to any scene that he's in, and this rhythm reflects that. There's always a feeling of unpredictability with him when he enters into a new room. While he might be looking like he's shopping for groceries at one moment, the next he kicks someone into a coffee machine and adds an extra insult to the injury by pouring it on them. It's an extra way to make a fight scene feel more bebop than a straight up hand to hand brawl in the same location. This specific set of circumstances isn't likely to happen anywhere else because Spike has turned this specific environment into his advantage. All of these ideas of a scene flow from one another, with a specific character changing those scenes, causing the art, the direction, and the movement of every episode to just sing on its own. There's an attention to detail where every background and decoration on a mantle creates a living, breathing atmosphere that we can all just soak in while watching. So later on in the series, when it starts to pull from noir, psychedelic, and western aesthetics, it's believable and doesn't cause whiplash in terms of struggling to adjust from one genre to another. This allows you to kick back and enjoy the series as it goes from episode to episode, since with the exception of a handful of them, most of these episodes aren't related to each other at all, and you don't complain because of how fun they are to watch. Now, there are other strengths of the anime that are worthy of a video of their own, like the soundtrack, art direction, and backgrounds of these characters, but I want to transition into how we as an audience watch the anime of Bebop with the above in mind, and how effective and realistic it is to see all of these factors translate from anime to live action. Changing mediums is inherently hard to do. Many anime don't live up to their manga counterparts, and in the same vein, many live-action adaptations of that anime don't live up to the source material either. These disappointments come from, in my opinion, a general confusion on what we as fans want while transitioning mediums. Throughout watching Netflix's Cowboy Bebop, I kept getting the feeling that the show was relying on making you say, "Oh, that's just like that one shot from the anime," versus feeling how those worked in live action. Some say an A for effort, but I know that I speak for pretty much everyone when I would rather them give up some of the direct anime references if that results in having a good adaptation that simply echoes the same strengths of the anime, versus something that tries to follow the anime so closely that it can't breathe on its own. From the get-go of the first episode, there are times where I kind of squirmed while watching. It's kind of cringe-inducing when I see someone swaying like an anime character, just for the sake of looking like an anime character. One specific shot that absolutely took me out of it only happened for a split second, but it was indicative of a larger issue with the adaptation as a whole. Spike approaches three old men, as we saw them in the anime, and when asked for directions, you see all three of them point simultaneously to the bar behind them. While that same scene might play out in the anime and make us say, "Oh, haha, how quirky," when I see it happen in live action, it belongs in the category of making people move like anime characters can be super cringe. Have you ever in your entire life seen real adult people act this way? I'll answer it for you. Never. Not even once. It just has this feeling of trying to shoehorn anime quirks into a series so much that you forget how normal people interact with each other. It would have been better for just one of them to gesture over their shoulder and glance backwards. Now, to be clear, I'm not complaining about this one 5-second clip and saying that that one specific scene ruins the whole show. I'm truly not. I'm saying that this happens multiple times every single episode, and this is a glimpse as to why it feels off-putting. When there are other scenes that I like, for example, Spike taking the time to prep and fly, that's a scene that's taken straight out of the anime, and it's perfect. I love it. It looks good. But when the live action leans too heavily into the, "Hey, don't forget this is based off of an anime," that's when you start to lose me. Another problem with translating anime to live action is that if you see the same scene in both, the anime is inherently going to take more effort to do this. In episode 5 of the anime, one tiny scene that I like shows this attention to detail. It's this simple shot of shuffling cards. It would have been easy for the animators to draw this same scene from above to save themselves the work of having to draw the different colors and suits, but Cowboy Bebop is different. They don't cut corners. However much extra time and effort that this took was worth it. While many wouldn't have thought about it if it was drawn from above, it's the attentiveness that makes this scene stand out. If this same scene was in live action, that shot of the different cards is just going to happen naturally. It wouldn't carry the same weight. I'm so sorry for the pun. Although, when talking about the differences in the anime and live action, it's inevitable that people will start to nitpick on what has been changed and what has not been changed. In the case of Bebop, some of these are extremely valid criticisms of what's been changed, but others aren't, and I feel like it's worth specifying that not all changes are bad changes. Those who work in the entertainment industry inherently want to express themselves, and I think it's completely valid for somebody working on a live-action adaptation to put their own spin on the story up to a certain point. While tuning in, we want to see the iconic moments that stood out to us in the anime and further the live-action's take on these moments. But at the exact same time, if they just recreated every episode with the exact same plots and scenes, that doesn't really seem like it's worth pursuing creatively. Because of this, I don't really care when writers or directors make these types of quote-unquote filler episodes, as long as it doesn't affect the source material and the future of its plot. Spoiler, if you haven't grinded through the Netflix version, this is probably the part that's the most frustrating about the live action. When sitting down and planning the way that these live action shows are set up, I can imagine the studio probably says something around, hey, we've greenlit you 10 episodes. We want you to adapt these 5 episodes from the original, and in turn, you can do whatever you want with the other 5. The ratio might be higher or lower given the property, this is just an example, but at some point, a measure of creative control has to be given to the showrunners to either expand on something that they like about the characters, a certain dynamic, or the plot itself. And I really do respect when a director or showrunner really tries to tell their own story, especially with a series as beloved as Bebop. That takes real, genuine guts. It takes courage to introduce something new to a franchise that hasn't had any new material in 2 decades. The goal in these instances becomes adding something that's good enough to stand with the original, or to at least be a good footnote to the original. In the live action, Vicious has an underwater fish lair with gutted fish lining the corridor. And honestly, it looks pretty cool. The reason why this works and why it makes me appreciate the scene is because it simply symbolizes Vicious's brutality, and his character arc in any medium isn't hinged on the idea of him having or not having a secret lair. It simply gives a deeper look into his mindset and personality. Further, barring what happens in some of the later scenes, purely from a setting perspective, Annie, or Anna as she's called in the Netflix show, now runs a jazz club versus a convenience store. I never really cared about what setting she was in. I cared about how she interacted with Spike. I would even argue that the jazz roots of Cowboy Bebop's soundtrack makes her new setting more effective than her original shop in the anime. For those anime purists, this next one's probably my most controversial take. I honestly don't mind Jet having a daughter. In fact, I think it was pretty cute. The scene of him dancing oblivious to Spike in the background is one of the funniest moments in the show. The reason why I'm not angry at this addition is because we see the way that he interacts and talks about his daughter. If the original anime version also had a daughter, I can imagine that his anime counterpart would have acted pretty similarly. Despite this, I watched the live action a little bit in disbelief because despite making some of these small changes to the characters in ways that were, kind of fun and they kind of seemed in character, they'd also adjust entire character plots and motivations with almost no care to the ramifications that came from the changes. The easiest example here is, unsurprisingly, Julia and Vicious. In an interview with the LA Times, showrunner Andre Nemec talked about how they saw Julia's character and it, quote, became clear that we had this amazing opportunity to birth a villain. He continues, to see this woman who has been put into this environment and through her desire to escape the environment is inculcated into its horror and into its violence, realize that she can take the reins now. And the issue is that in the Netflix version, she shoots Vicious and Spike and says that she'll take over the syndicate, but her entire character arc in the anime is in jeopardy now. Throughout the anime, Julia is this haunting presence throughout Spike's journey. He wakes up and sees her. When he goes to bed, he sees her. When he sees things, it reminds him of her. When they finally get put into a position to see each other again, they are both running from the syndicate due to Vicious successfully throwing a coup. They're pushed together one last time where she's later killed. For the live action to reach this same moment in the anime, you've undoubtedly muddied the waters. Now that Julia runs the syndicate, what does she have to run from later? Was the writer's plan that she would somehow later lose control of the syndicate so that she can once again be on the run, just so her and Spike can reach the same point in the live action? It seems that you're causing unnecessary confusion to get back to the same place that you were before. Also, I know I'm saying this while this show has been canceled. It's not coming back, so talking about the future of the show isn't really necessary. But that's the impression that one gets while watching and thinking about the plot moving forward, especially if you already know about the anime. This need to be unnecessarily different from the anime causes the train to go off of the tracks. So, after looking at this, what can we say makes a good adaptation, and what are some of the lessons that the live action One Piece can take from Bebop? When looking at adapting a beloved series, you have to play into what made it good in the first place. We love Bebop because of that flow from scene to scene. The atmosphere, the way the characters interact, the fights, the music, everything comes together into a neat bow. In the same way, the live action One Piece has to recognize what makes One Piece great and emulate that. One Piece's world is so rich and vibrant. If the live action can portray a sense of how much there is left to explore, this feeling of always being at the tip of the iceberg with so much more to unravel, you're going to have a great overall tone to the story. The journey is the enjoyable part, not just the end goal. The relationships that they've formed and developed with each other, going through each other's highs and lows, that make us recognize that this is the crew that's in it for the long haul, and that they're the ones who will make Luffy the king of the pirates. Netflix's One Piece also has to take the initiative to change anime gestures and adjust things to look normal for people doing those same actions. I just want people to act like people. If you direct them like you would a stage play, a TV show, or a movie, just have them do the same thing. Relying too heavily on a one-for-one shot remake, even when the gestures and styles don't translate that well, is a recipe for disaster. In fact, I can almost guarantee that people are going to clown on the way that Luffy stretches. It's going to inherently look weird, but that's something that you aren't able to avoid. On the other hand, if I see actors try to emulate some of the reactions and crazy poses that Oda is known for, it's probably going to be super offsetting. No person can make this face, and I really do not want to see someone try it. Oh my god, if I see the Enel face, I'm literally going to scream. I also want the showrunners to add things that make this story have its own flavor of One Piece. For example, one of the casting releases for the One Piece live action is Mr. Seven. If you don't remember Mr. Seven, it's alright. He hasn't appeared in the story outside of a quote from Oda. This is the specific bounty hunter that Zoro mentioned at Whiskey Peak. But now, he actually has a real person to play him. I love that. Do more of that. Expand on the things that we haven't seen in the world, but still impact the characters and relate to their backstories. This is a perfect way to incorporate those small nuggets for people who are big fans of the show and will appreciate the small gesture. I think that the most important factor with this is avoiding unnecessarily changing the character dynamics. Even though anime Bebop is largely episodic, live action Bebop was basically off of the rails as soon as the second or third episode dropped in terms of how it was going to relate to the anime. And with something as plot driven and character focused as One Piece, if you decide to add extra elements into that are unnecessary, you are going to throw the entire story off. There's a ripple effect with these kinds of things, and if you change them moving forward, those dynamics between the characters and the plots are also dramatically shifted. This also relates to the idea of unnecessarily shoehorning in characters where they're not needed. I felt that Julia got shoehorned into a role that she wasn't meant to play in Netflix's Bebop. So just don't add people that aren't necessary to that point in the story. A prime example of this, and I seriously mean this, I swear to God, I'm not kidding. Right now, the show is projected to not even enter the Grand Line. So if I see Blackbeard or Akainu show up for even half of a frame or mentioned by name, it's on site, straight up. While they are important to the story later on, maybe the most important characters outside of the Straw Hats, we can wait for that gift to unwrap itself. There's no purpose to bringing them in this soon. Let their interactions with the rest of the story age like a fine wine. The retroactive revelation of their impact on the story is much more effective than just some random insert. And honestly, I expected the "hey, don't do these things" part of the video to be way longer, but I seriously can be happy with any adaptation that follows the above. It's so simple not to mess up, but I just have this creeping feeling that my expectations, no matter how low, will be disappointed, whether due to studio interference or some writer who wants to proceed in a way that clashes with the source material. Although I do find some comfort that Oda himself is a stopgap to that. A few weeks ago, Oda released a letter highlighting his involvement in the series and how they've been working on this since 2016. He even says that they won't launch unless he's satisfied with the series, which I'm personally a little skeptical of unless there's some kind of contract behind that, but obviously I'm not privy to those details. I just worry about a multi-billion-dollar corporation basically getting stopped by one dude in Japan who says he's not happy with what they've done with his work. Oda also highlights the fact that the actors in the series have totally jumped on board and become big fans themselves. Emily Rudd, who's playing Nami, has basically decked out her Instagram to be dedicated to Nami since she was revealed as the actress. I see the love that these actors are putting forward, so I'm gonna hold out hope that this is the live action to break the mold of bad adaptations. I'm hopeful and optimistic for the live action. I know that I'll be watching the day that it comes out, and so I hope that you will too. Thank you so much for watching this longer than normal video. This one was a bit of a doozy, and I felt myself really struggling with what I wanted to say until basically the finish line to record, edit, and publish, so it was a little stressful, but I'm glad that I didn't rush it. It's a topic I've wanted to cover for a really long time now, so I wanted to make sure it was done justice. That's all for me today, and if you want to see more content like this, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment for your next suggestion. If you follow me on Twitter, assuming that the site doesn't get run to the ground for a while, you saw a teeny itsy bitsy little peek into a future video. That one's probably going to be a few months of work, but I'm super excited for it nonetheless. Thanks again for watching. This was Panel Flow.